Okay, good evening. We are going to begin. Yes. Okay, there's a very interesting sphona at the beginning of the parsha, towards the beginning. Perek Chof Aleph Posuk Dalet. Yes. Posuk Dalet. Yes, the sphona says, so you have the list of Krovim. The Kohen is allowed to become Tomei only for particular relatives. Kim Nashera Korov Elov. And again, you've got the lists, right? All the ones who are closest to him. The Sforno says like this. What does it mean when it says these words are very cryptic? It's possible. So Rashi learns that it means he shouldn't become Tomei. He's not allowed to become Tomei if his wife, who is also to him, so he has married someone who's also to him, Ishto Psula, then he's mechulol bo, he becomes a cholol through her. That's lehi chaloi. He can't become tomei through her. In other words, if she's not, unless she's a meis mitzvah, there's no one else to bury her, he's not allowed to become tomei because it's lehi chaloi. It's someone who is also to him, makes him a cholol, right? But the Sforno says a different shot. He says, "Vatam shlei tamei kohen kim lekroivav hu." This pasuk, he says, gives the reason why the kohen can only become tomei for his relatives. Ki omnam hakohen, he says, hu baal ba'amov. He is a leader, like a baal, as in literally a husband, but it means like an owner. It means someone responsible, right? He's a leader, lohovin or lohoros. In his people, he's a baal ba'amov, right? He's got a responsibility amongst his people to understand, to teach. Famous posuk, Yisifse Kohen, Yishmuru Das, Torah Yivakshim Mipiu. The lips of the Kohen, they guard knowledge, and the Torah people seek from his mouth. Big responsibility over him, right? And it's fitting for this person, he says, Linhoig benesius, because he has a responsibility in terms of leadership, because he's a person who people seek advice from, right, guidance from. The Torah Kohen very much had that role, right, especially. Therefore, he's got to conduct himself with a sense of duty, a sense of responsibility in the way he behaves, so that people listen to him. Or hakunosoi maybe, el mikdash v'kodoshov. No, it's hachanosoi. He shouldn't be mechalel his state of preparedness for the Beis Hamikdash and all of the kodesh that he's involved in, kedei lechabed hamesim habilti krovim, to honor the deceased who are not his relatives. Okay, as it says, shak omram zal, as Chazal say, shakvura v'ahesped lemeis hem yikra deshechvi. Essentially, burial and hespedim for a mace are honor to those who have passed away. That's what they're there for. Primarily, they're the honor of the shichli, those who passed away. What the Sforno is trying to say, if you read sort of between the lines, is that the Kohen has to make a judgment. He's got to make a value judgment. He's got to balance his responsibilities. On the one hand, he's got responsibilities towards the Beis Hamikdash, towards maintaining his kedusha, not becoming tomei. On the other hand, there's something pulling him in another direction, and it's not that it's something frivolous or inappropriate. On the contrary, it's one of the the greatest possible things. And mitzvah, levias hames, right? All of these things, yeah. And it's a great deal of cover to show cover to a mace. But the Kohen has to understand that he has to prioritize his responsibilities towards the Beis Hamikdash, towards kedusha, towards his kahuna. The Kohen needs to retain a sense of priorities, even if it's difficult. That's the point. Difficult. It's not easy. Loi yitamo baal ba'amov l'hechaloi. The baal ba'amov, the leader amongst his people, cannot become tomei, even if he thinks that it actually makes sense and it's logical. And I've got to show honor to the deceased. No, your responsibility is towards the Beis Hamikdash. He has to put the Beis Hamikdash first. So then, of course, if that's the case, the obvious question is, why are the relatives different? You would think that if that's the case, all Kohanim, right, not just the Kohen Gadol, all Kohanim should not be able to become tomei for those 7 close relatives, right? Why is it that there's an exception? So there's a few more words in the Sforno. Omnam, he says, however, likroivim, when it comes to relatives, hitir lehitomei, the Torah permitted him to become tomei, Ki kvoidom hu kvoidoi. Because this is all about the Kohen understanding and retaining his self-respect, his sense of the level of responsibility he has, right? Therefore, he can't become Tomei. He's got to maintain that covered that's inherent in his position. It's covered for the sake of Shem Shemayim, right? But honoring those relatives, kvoidom hu kvoidoi. Ultimately, that is his own covered. That is his own covered. It's not to honor them. Doesn't depreciate. It doesn't bring down his honor. On the contrary, it raises it up. The Sforno is trying to say here that when we honor those who are closest to us, those who we are required to honor, that is actually the greatest honor to ourselves. In other words, to neglect that would be a great failure in the sense of priorities. It would show a fundamental lack of understanding. A Kohen is required at all times to balance responsibilities. He has a duty. He has to raise himself above the people. He has to be serving the Beis Hamikdash. He can't lower his he has to act in that sense of a sort of a higher level in that way, demonstrated by not becoming Tomei. He's got to put the covered of the Beis Hamikdash, the covered that's due his position first. But if he did not become Tomei for those close relatives, that would itself be undermining his covered. To honor them is honoring him. That's the view, that's the perspective we need to have on those who are closest, those who are closest to us. That's what the Sforno is saying. Now in Posuk Chof, again, Perek Chof and Posuk Vov, again another Sforno, you see the Sforno says, it says Kedoshim, Posuk Vov, Kedoshim Yule Elokehem, they shall be Kodosh to their God, to Hashem, V'lo Yechalelu Shem Elokehem, and they should not be Mechalel, they cannot be Mechalel the Shem Hashem. Why? Because the Ishe Hashem Lechem Elokehem Makrivim, they offer the Lechem Elokehem, V'hoyu Kodesh, and they shall be Kodesh. They shall be Kodesh. So Rashi says Kedoshim Yu means Al Korachom. The Beis Din are makdish them against their will, right? Against their will. There is something here which is required of them fundamentally beyond what they themselves do. They need to be sometimes forced into this position. The Sforno says, so you might say like this. This is all these rules that the Torah talks about for the Kohanim. Essentially, they're for the covet of the Kohanim. That's what they're for. So therefore, you might say, if it's for the covet of the Kohanim, let the Kohanim themselves decide. They can be mochel. Let them be mochel. Let them forgive the honor that's due to them. So the Torah says, it says the Sforno, even though all these things are for the honor of the Kohen, ein lo reshus. The Kohen has no permission to forgive his own honor. The honor which is due to the Kohanim is ultimately the honor of Hashem. If they are mochel this, what happens? They are mechalel the Shem Hashem. So, in other words, by saying the extremes in this pasuk, kadoshim yu lelokehem, v'lo yechalelu Shem Elokehem. Because if they don't act with that kedusha, if they don't act and follow these rules, even though you might think, well, it's for their own honor, so they want to be mocheling. No, because if they are mochel, if they forgive that honor, that itself is a chilul Hashem, chilul Shem Shemayim.
More talks about can we make chilul?
Yeah.
But we don't invoke the idea that chilul is chilul Shem Shemayim.
Exactly. It seems to be, well, yeah. Yeah, there's a whole thing about when you can be mochel and when you can't.
But he's allowed to be mochel.
Yeah, but here not.
Not.
That's exactly what it was saying. That's what it seemed to be saying. Yeah, absolutely. That's what you can be saying. And there's interesting applications of that. Whatever, giving Mr. Shem Ashir on Shabbos Mincha about can you ever have a non-Kohen for the first Aliyah? In other words, can a Kohen ever be mochel, give it to someone else? Yeah.
Because all the reasons you're bringing for a Kohen could be brought for Thomas Chacham as well.
Right. Potentially, yeah. That's a fair point. It's a fair point, and whether it's the same, But the point also, the difficulty really with this pasuk is we're talking about levels of holiness, madrigas, higher, kadoshim. You they have to be holy for that. So why is it that if they don't behave in this way, they are mechalel Shem Hashem. They just defame the name of Hashem. It's the extreme opposite. Why does there have to be these extreme opposites? Why can't there be a middle of the road? Kadoshim again, because if not, there'll be Machal al Shem Hashem, right? Why does it have to be one or the other? Rav Yaakov Naiman in Sefer Dachin Musa asks this question. If it is true that we're talking here about them needing to raise themselves up in levels of Kedusha, logically you would say, well, if they don't do that, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a Chilul Hashem. The opposite. Maybe they're just the middle of the road. You find the same thing. This is the parsha of Kiddush Hashem. This is the parsha where the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem it appears. You have it later on as well. It's a few times. It mentions with the Kohanim as well, with the Chalalu. And then you have it later on in the parsha of Shorei Chesed V'Eis, the beginning of the parsha of the leading to the Moedim. There you have it as well. That's the source for a minion. It's all in this week's parsha, the Kiddush, the idea of Kiddush Hashem, right? So why is it that we have to have it exchanged? So Rabbi Yaakov Naiman says that the idea is like this. In Avodas Hashem, when you serve Hashem, there is no middle of the road. That's the truth. That's the point. There isn't a middle of the road. There's no what he calls derech mumutzas. There is no middle path. There are only, right? There's only a Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem. It's tough. It's difficult, right? But that's how it is. And that's why the Torah says, if they're not Makadish themselves, unfortunately, it's automatically, the absence of Kedusha is going to be the Chilul.
Even the smallest thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be, and you can lose it. And he brings another fascinating examples where we see this, okay? Second Parsha Kriya Shema, right? For Hoya im Shomoya, okay? La'avat Hashem lekechem, la'avdei b'chol levavchem b'chol nafshechem. What comes afterwards? Hishamru lachem, right? Penifta levavchem v'sartem avadatem v'sartem avadatem elhem acherim. Avodah Zarah. Where's the middle of the road? Yeah, where's the middle path? B'chol levavchem b'chol nafshechem. And if you don't serve Hashem, you're over the Zarah. I like it. It's like you don't go like that. Yeah, you don't go from one extreme to the other. How can there be no middle of the road? How can there be no middle pathway? So the point is that it's not that this is the idea of the golden middle of the road. That's different. It's a question of that's almost about midas, for example. How one should conduct oneself. You've got to be careful. Midas, sometimes every midah can have a good and bad thing. Slightly different. When it comes to serving Hashem, the point here is that if a person, in the absence of doing the right thing, doesn't just mean you're stuck in the middle. It automatically means going in a completely negative direction. And he brings another example of this. Chazal say that Hashem, so to speak, was mevater, forgave or chose to overlook in some way avodah zarah, gilui arayos and shvichas damim, right? The three cardinal sins: idolatry, immorality, bloodshed. V'lo vita al ovan bittul Torah, but he did not forgive or overlook the sin of bittul Torah. Now this is very strange because you would think that of all the things that would be easier to overlook would be bittul Torah. The harder thing to overlook would be those cardinal sins, right? Why is it that that it works in this way? So he brings the altar of Kelm, and the altar of Kelm said like this: that if a person descends to the level where he's able to transgress those three averos chamoros, right? Those the highest and the worst of those averos, okay, then he's already lost completely, effectively. He's almost lost. He can always do tshuva, but it's incredibly difficult. He's lost what it means to be an odom, to be here. It doesn't help almost to quote unquote punish him. He's already so far removed. When is it that there's an ability to bring the person back? Okay, that is at the moment when he begins on that pathway. Okay, and that's what it means that Hashem was not mavata on the oven of bittul Torah because of where it can lead. The small things can immediately lead to the opposite extreme. If the person doesn't take into account the concept that the absence of kedusha can automatically lead to the chilul Hashem, then you don't have the kedusha either. You have nothing. You automatically have the chilul Hashem. It's a challenge. It's a very difficult thing. Okay. It is, but if you think about it, it's incredibly logical because it's not a static movement. It's like a pendulum. You automatically go from there to why he brings one fine example he brings is the afternoon laning for Yom Kippur. famously, right, the Parsha of the Arayos. Why is it that we lay in the Parsha of the Arayos on the Mincha of Yom Kippur all the forbidden relationships, right? Because the person's going to think, I'm at the pinnacle of the year on Yom Kippur. Why on earth would I think or worry about the worst possible Averos? Incest and all terrible things like that, forbidden relationships. And the answer is because it's exactly at that moment that the Torah wants to teach us. Do not think when you're at the pinnacle and all the lofty thoughts and everything is, you're thinking of Chumras and everything else, right? Don't think that means that you're therefore so far away from falling right down. No, you always have to bear in mind that the absence of growing can automatically lead to the entire extreme opposite. And that's why you have in the Torah, whole way through this Parsha, it's Kiddush Hashem mirrored by Chilul Hashem in that way. It's difficult, but it's a very, very important idea. There's a moshel that I think it's brought by Rabbi Yerucham. I think it's Rabbi Yerucham in his Sefer Das Torah, who says that he brings the moshel of an eagle, a little eaglet. I think that's the word. No. Anyway, little eagle that was in a chick, right? And the little eagle was born. The little chick, the eagle egg, right, is removed by a person from the eagle's nest and is placed inside the nest with chicken eggs, right? Okay, and the eagle is mixing with the chickens. The eagle is born, right? The egg hatches, and the eagle is born. And the eagle has never known anything apart from the little baby eagle, has never known anything other than chickens. And therefore, the eagle grows up like a chicken. It doesn't do anything more than a chicken. It flies as far as a chicken can fly. It hops like a chicken. It looks like a chicken. What? Eaglet. It is an eaglet, isn't it? Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, an eaglet, right, yeah. It does, the little eaglet does everything like a chicken. And one day, right, when they're busy playing outside, these little chicks and this eaglet, right, they see an eagle flying above. So the eaglet says to the other chickens, what is that bird? And the chickens say to the eaglet, right, that's an eagle. Can you see how amazing that eagle is? How far it can fly, how fast it can fly, how high it can fly. But the eagle is still like a chicken, the little eagle, because it has never been able to push itself beyond. Why? Because the idea that Rabbi Yerucham wants to bring out of this moshel is that there's no greater Chilul Hashem than squandering our own potential for greatness. The eagle thinks it will always remain a chicken because all it sees is other chickens. It doesn't realize that it could be an eagle, right? It doesn't realize it could be an eagle. This is the swinging between Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem, right? The greatest Chilul Hashem is not understanding what a Kiddush Hashem we can make in life. That's the message, how great we can be. Now, if you go to Perek Chof Beis Posach of Zion, in the Parsha of Shorei Kesef, there's a tiny kliyokar, a very, very tiny little kliyokar, which I think has such an important idea. Often the kliyokar is very long, so people get scared of the kliyokar because it's very long. Don't need to be scared, but even so, this one is very short. The kliyokar says, Shari Chesed V'Yezki Yivaleid Omra Meforshim. So this is the part. This is the beginning of the laning for the Yom Tovim. Although it's actually doesn't begin until the next parsha. So right, come with that in a second. And this beginning pasuk talks about the fact that you have to wait till it's called Mechusas Zman. You're not allowed to shech the korban until it has reached the 8th day, right? 8th day after it's born. It has to be 7 days with the mother. From the 8th day onwards, it is then possible and usable as a korban. Says the Kliyokar, Omra Meforshim say, Shebiyom Hivoldoi, the day not the eagle, the animals are born. Yesh Aloi Olav Shem Shar Kesed. Right? The very day it's born, it's called an ox, it's called a sheep, it's called a goat. Strange, Why is it not a baby? This is a chazal. Why is it not called by the name like a kid goat or a calf? It's called a shar, a keser. It's kiyevole when it's born. Why? Because it cannot add on. It does not add on to its completeness, its wholesomeness. It's born as it's born. That's how it is. It is born complete, whole. Everything as it is. That is the extreme opposite with a human being. A person is born unformed. A person is born at a very low level in that sense. Beautiful 4 words. The acquisition of completeness is entirely dependent on our actions, on his actions. That's the point. And he goes on to say, that's why the Torah is coming to tell us, they shouldn't say, the day they're born, they have completeness. In Kenu, you might think you can offer them up immediately. They're ready. Shara Kesed, the first day. Has to be wait till the 8th day. Okay, he goes into the idea of 8 being Kodesh, being holy. Okay, that's the Chiddush of the Pasuk. You have to wait till the 8th day. But the underlying idea that Kliyaka is trying to bring out here is that only animals can be called complete on the day they're born. Human beings, by definition, are completely incomplete because completion, shleimus, is entirely dependent on our actions. So in that sense, because we have the ability to grow. So in that sense, there is perhaps we can understand why it is, just suggesting maybe, why it is that we always begin the parsha of the Moadim, meaning we start the laning from here. We don't start from where you would think we would start, which is Moed Hashem Kodesh, right? The next paragraph. Because the introduction is Shore Kesef Vayezki Evoled. When you come to the different points in the year, Shabbos, Yom Tovim, everything, right? You have to understand that they are catalysts of growth. That's the whole idea. It's what they're supposed to be. Because we need to look at our lives we need to contrast ourselves with animals. Animals begin their lives, the day they're born, they complete the whole. They cannot become. Of course, they grow bigger, but they are complete. There's no shlemus. Their actions don't do anything, right? The animal, the day it's born, is already whole, is already complete. We live and have to live on a growth trajectory that we create ourselves. We will not be sholem, we will not be complete unless we work on that ourselves. So the cycle of the Yomim Tovim needs to be viewed as a growth trajectory. It needs to be viewed as a cycle of growth. The contrast is there at the beginning. This is animals. Animals, there's no growth. For you, there is. And Hashem says, I put these points in time for you to be able to grow from them. Just suggesting that's maybe one idea, the link between this parsha and the Yom Tovim. There's a very famous Rashi prayer, Chof Gimel Chof Beis, where Rashi asks, why is the parsha of this mitzvah of leket shikram peah stuck in the middle of the Yom Tovim, right? Yeah, you've got the parsha of Shavuos, and then one pasuk of the kutzrechem es kitzeratzachem lo yischale pa'asodcha bekutzrecha. You're not allowed to cut peah, right? Take peah. You have to leave the leket. Yeah, you have to do the things that are only laget hazovos. So the question is obvious. What's it got to do with the murder? What's the Yom Tovim? What's the Yom Tovim here? Why do we have to talk about leket shichon peah? Says Rashi, chazav v'shana lavod b'shnei lavim. Omer Rav Dimi, so to say 2 lavim, 2 negative prohibitions. But this is the key bit. Rav Dimi Rabbi Yosef said, Ma ro'a kosav litma be'emtza regolim. Why is this in the middle of the Yom Tovim? Pesach v'atzeres mikan. You've got Pesach and Shavuos on one side, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim, Ve'echag mikan, and you've got Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot on the other side. L'namedcha comes to tell you, Shekol ha'nosnein leket shikha peah le'oni, u'maisa oni karoi. Person who gives leket shikha and peah to an oni, he gives the matanos aniyim as he's supposed to, the gifts to the poor. Malin olav kilu bona beis hamikdash, we consider as if he built the beis hamikdash. V'hikriv korbanosov b'soichai, right? As if he built the Beis HaMikdash and offered the korbanos inside it. Okay, so now it's still a bit difficult. So we're saying like this. We're talking about the korbanos Yom Tovim. So we're saying that the reason why this pasuk is inserted here, so you should know that if you give the right things you're supposed to give to aniyim and you support them in the way you're supposed to support them to poor people, then it's as if you've built the Beis HaMikdash and offered up all these korbanos. But it's still a bit of a tenuous link. It seems difficult to understand. So there is a Gemara which Rav Mordechai Miller in his Shabbos Shirim brings a parallel to this particular point of the gifts to the aniyim, the matnas aniyim, being placed amongst the korbanos in an unusual place. When we told about the uniqueness of the korbanos, because he brings also, we haven't time to go into in detail, it brings the Ramban, it brings the Ibn Ezra, that it's specifically connected to Shavuos. Shavuos, you harvest the Bikurei Kitzir Chitzim, and therefore you need to remember that when you harvest the Omer, don't forget to make sure you give the right matanos. Beginning that you're focused on the field, make sure you give the gifts to the poor. There's a Gemara in Yevamos, and the Gemara says, Fiyomi did it recently, Gero comes to convert, we tell him, we ask him, why are you converting? What is it? What is it you want to do? Do you not know that things are very difficult for us nowadays? It's hard to be Jewish, difficult, tough life, and people don't like us, etc. We tell him all these things, right? And if he says that, yes, I know, but I still want it, then we accept him. And then the Gemara says, we tell him some mitzvahs kalas and mitzvahs chamuras. We tell him some easy mitzvahs and some harder mitzvahs. And we tell him the sin of leket shechon peh. You have to make special mention to the ger about the sin of neglecting the gifts to the poor. Leket shechon peh. So again, it's fascinating. Why again do we put that in there? What is the connection? Why is it that we put those things in there? And to summarize briefly, the idea which he develops at some length, based on a Michtav Meliol, the Rav Dessler says that the essential character of a person is revealed with utmost clarity through the least and less significant actions we perform. Anyone can be motivated to achieve and do great things at great moments, right? At great moments in life. You can be there, you're at the pinnacle, I've done an amazing thing, right? The real character is revealed at the time when one performs very insignificant small things, very, what no one else notices, the little things. And he says that the idea is that there's specifically a juxtaposition here, between Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah, the harvest season, between Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah. The Torah tells us, remember to make sure that you give the gifts to the poor. Effectively saying that the question that's being asked of us is, you are standing between two major points in the year. Shavuos, wow. Kabbalah Satorah. Rosh Hashanah. What do you do in between them? That's what the Torah is focusing on. What do you do in between? How do you live your life on those ordinary days between the high points of Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah? When you're involved in the harvest season, what are you doing? What are you focused on? Are you remembering those who have less? Are you remembering the small things? Are you remembering the little lekech, the gleanings that leave? Are you leaving those things for the poor? Are you remembering that that's the real test of who you are as a person, as a character? And that's why we also mention it with the person who comes to be Megayah. Because the message is, yes, you're going to become to be Jewish, and there's going to be incredible moments and moments of great inspiration, and you're going to join us for the Yom Tovim, and it's all going to be, but you have to remember, don't forget that the real test is not the pinnacles of the year. The high points of the year in the Parsha of the Moedim, they're all massively important, but they're not the real test of your character. The real test of your character is how you behave in terms of leket shechon peah, how you behave in terms of the less needy, when no one's going to see what you're doing anyway. And that's where the Torah puts in. It's a beautiful idea. It's specifically between Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah. That's really that's the litmus test. Exactly. That's the litmus test. Yeah. Okay. Have a good Shabbos. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.